Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as we have the latest on David Ornstein and, well, not David Ornstein, on Dan Ashworth. David Ornstein giving us an update on this as Newcastle look to block Manchester United's recruitment of Dan Ashworth. How is this going to end up? Is it an issue for United? We were talking about this last night. There's more developments around this. Newcastle's obsession is to stop Dan Ashworth from being at Manchester United this summer transfer window. So what would the point be in having a major, massive Manchester United transfer window this summer and not having Dan Ashworth there? It'd be a bit like being late for your own wedding. We need him here. We need him here. So we'll be talking about that. Also, Mason Greenwood, price has been set as Atletico Madrid, Barcelona and other Spanish clubs queue up to sign Mason Greenwood. A price has been touted around, according to Spanish reports. We'll look at that. It's also a very similar price to what we'd pay for Edison from Atalanta, who could be coming into Manchester United as an heir to Casemiro's throne, who I think actually is being discussed by some of you way too prematurely. I mean, again, we spoke about Bruno Fernandes last night. We're awash with stories of Casemiro being... I mean, look, I think to be fair, you can understand people who watch football in detail and people who don't watch football in detail, because this nonsense that Casemiro's finished, that he picks up too many yellow cards because his legs have gone. He's always picked up yellow cards, especially in a Manchester United shirt. The only reason he didn't pick up loads of yellow cards at Real Madrid, and he did, was because, you know, he never got sent off. Real Madrid get preferential treatment in the Spanish league. We all know that. There's nothing different about Casemiro, and I actually think there's a big reason that we've won the 4 games that we've won, and that's because Casemiro started all of them. So we'll talk about that as well. Also, the centre-back situation. Who is the defensive monster that people like Romano and everyone else keep talking about that Manchester United are going to sign this summer? We'll talk about that. There's a few names in there. Branthwaite, De Ligt, Todibo, we'll talk about that as well. Lots to get into on the show this morning. Get your comments in as always. Also, just a massive shout out as well. We're going to talk about Newcastle and the blocking of the move for Dan Ashworth this summer transfer window. But the podcast has just dropped. It's just dropped this morning. Give it a listen. You can scan the QR code or go through the link in the description. Lots being discussed in there. Really good topic on top 5 Premier League managers of all time. You can get involved in that debate. But the first 10 minutes is basically roasted. Manchester United rob Newcastle of their future, and it's a very interesting 10 minutes, especially for you United fans, about the impact of Dan Ashworth coming to Manchester United, the damage it does to Newcastle, and the positivities it brings to Manchester United. I'm not going to get into that on a news show, but if you want to listen to that and get involved in that, listen to the podcast, scan the QR code next to me for that. But look, let's hit the news this morning. David Ornstein has come out and said that he is hearing that the big issue Newcastle have is that they do not want, and they are very sensitive to Newcastle having Dan Ashworth leave them and go to Manchester United this summer. Their big sticking point, even with money, is that they do not want Dan Ashworth joining Manchester United this summer transfer window. So all this talk of 10, 15, 20 million pounds of compensation is actually potentially redundant because Newcastle are obsessed about blocking him joining Manchester United before the summer. To which I think many of you would say, well, what's the bloody point then? Is there a naivety here, or is there a story to be told? I don't think Ineos are naive. I don't think Sir David Brailsford is naive. I don't think Blanc and Sir Jim Radcliffe and Barada are naive. I don't think that they are going to go and get a director of football that they can't use until next summer. I just don't think it makes any sense. We're already playing catch-up of 10 years. We're 10 years behind Man City. We're probably 5 years behind Arsenal. We're probably 6 years behind Liverpool. Are we going to really cost ourselves another year on a director of football? And how stupid is it? You know what it's like? It's like buying a brand new house and letting the person you're buying the house from decorate it and put the furniture in it, and then, you know, we'll move in a year's time and redo it. Like the director of football has got to renovate the Old Trafford, the house, the transfers, the whole lot. There's no point. There's no point, and there's no win in getting a director of football and then not using him for a year. So this is going to get very interesting because it's coming in from it's coming in from David Ornstein. He's very, very good. Alistair, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. Little bit of news coming in. Some people are talking about it as well. Remember the Dave Jewell, this recruitment guy from Brighton that apparently Man United wanted. He has gone to Chelsea. So there we go. He's gone to Chelsea. But there will be more stuff coming out on this. As I say, I don't really have too much opinion on it at the moment because I just don't believe it. I don't believe that Manchester United have gone for a guy that they are going to get stuck with and not be able to use. And if we talk about Man United have swooped in and made Newcastle look stupid. Have we swooped in too soon? That's the flip side of the coin. Have we swooped in, said that's the guy we want, and then he's losing his job at Newcastle because they put him on gardening leave, and then Newcastle are going to go, yeah, you can have him, but you're not having him for a year, and we've got a new director of football in now, and we're stuck with Murta. It has to resolve itself. As I said, I fully believe that Manchester United will have anticipated this because it's ridiculously naive and foolish to take Dan Ashworth from Newcastle but not be able to use him for a year. It would be ridiculous. But it might not come down to money. If, as David Ornstein's saying, if Newcastle's obsession is to block Dan Ashworth working for Manchester United this summer, then no amount of money can change that. If they dig their heels in, where do you go? If Newcastle say, look, you can have him, but he's got a contract and he's not working for you before next September, jog on, what do you do? What do Manchester United do? I mean, Dan Ashworth's lost his job at Newcastle, or he's on gardening leave, and Man United are in a position where they go, okay, we've got our man, but Newcastle are not going to let us have him. We're going to have to use John Murta. What do we do? And Newcastle's sensitivity comes from the fact that they're concerned about what Dan Ashworth knows about their plans. We're going to talk about Edison in a minute. That's a player that Newcastle really wanted in January that maybe Dan Ashworth says to Man United, go and get. But my theory on this is that I think Newcastle are behaving somewhat, and Dwayne says we can't anticipate how Newcastle will react. But I think that Newcastle are somewhat naive here. I know they want Edison. I knew that they wanted Edison in January. Man United already know that Newcastle want Edison. Dan Ashworth coming in. What is in the modern game? Everybody knows who everybody's looking at because agents and players talk. Like I knew we were getting 2 players last summer before most of you did, and before it had even come out from Man United. I knew we were getting I knew we wanted Anthony before because of Brazilian reports. Nothing to do with United or sources close to United or British journalists. I said on June the 10th, we're going to go for Anthony. 3 days later, it hits the British press. So there is no, and some other, Fabrizio will know a lot more than I know. There are people out there that, the modern footballer has an entourage, and that entourage likes to talk. So there's no way that Newcastle need to fear Dan Ashworth walking into Manchester United and telling them all their plans. He can tell them anyway. He can tell them anyway. He's probably already told them if he wants to. Just because he's on gardening leave and he's not at United doesn't mean that Man United haven't been told what their plans are. It's stupid. I get it. I really do get it. I understand Newcastle's point. It's stubbornness. It's like, we've worked with this guy. We've trusted this guy. He's been a part of our project, and now he's going to go to a big rival. And I get it. I get Newcastle's point. But they did it to Brighton as well. The best you can get out of this situation is compensation. And that's the best for everybody, because if we're being completely blunt, if Newcastle dig their feet in and say you're not working at Man United until next year, it's stubbornness. And how does that help anybody really? You're just going to rile Dan Ashworth, who then probably will tell Man United absolutely everything on the quiet. So I just think get it solved and get it solved quickly. Dark says that they're acting like they're salty and like a salty ex-girlfriend. Yeah, I think they just need to just resolve the issue. But it's absolutely imperative that Man United get Dan Ashworth in for this summer. As I say, the breaking news really is that David Ornstein is saying that he's sort of hearing that Newcastle's obsession is to block Manchester United from using Dan Ashworth this summer. And I suppose we await the next development in this story, because there definitely will be more developments in it. Brighton head of recruitment, Sam Jewell, has reportedly been targeted for a role at Man United, has accepted an offer from Chelsea to join them in a multi-club role. Interesting move, because I think if United wanted him, you'd choose United over Chelsea. Chelsea's a bit of a mess as a club at the moment. But look, I'm not bothered about that. I'm not bothered about Paul Jewell or Dave Jewell or, the Crown Jewels. I'm not bothered about those appointments. All I really cared about was Director of Football and CEO. Everything underneath it, I'm sure we'll get good people in. But bottom line is, we need a Director of Football, and we need them in before the summer transfer window. We need them now. Mark, Tony Marshall says, Mark, there will be a loophole. Murta will work with Ashworth in his ear. As DiCaprio once said, is this all legal? Absolutely not. Would be huge if we could finally see a Man United manager significantly backed in their third season, says Braden. I completely agree. Headphones Bridge, says Joe. Morning, Mark, and all in the chat. Hope everyone is well, says Pete B. And Alistair Ahmad, welcome to the Members Club. Absolute legends. Get your badge in the chat. Love that. I'll put that back up for you later, but podcast is out. Really good first 10 minutes talking about the impact of Manchester United and Newcastle and Dan Ashworth and the next 5 years. Who will have... Because I think if you'd said to me at the start of the season, who will be the better club in 5 years' time, I thought Newcastle's trajectory was going to be way better than ours. I look at it now, well, listen to the podcast. That first 10 minutes sort of gets into it. Okay, let's not Paul Mitchell, Dan Ashworth. I'm getting mixed up with the names again. Right, let's move on. We're going to talk about Mason Greenwood for a moment. Reports from Spain are coming in that Mason Greenwood's price that Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, and a couple of other Spanish clubs are looking to pay has been set. They're looking to get him for 40 million euros, which is about 35 million pounds. Do you think that's the right price for Mason Greenwood with 1 year left on his contract? Well, this is the price that's being touted around. We've spoken previously about Atletico Madrid's interest. There has been talk of Barcelona's interest. Barcelona aren't the financial powerhouse that they used to be. They won't necessarily have huge amounts of money anymore. But 35 million pounds for Mason Greenwood feels a little bit light to me. I know there is obviously baggage, which those clubs will say, look, it's not like you're going to bring him back. And I suppose we're moving closer towards the summer transfer window. And of course, there will be people out there that don't want him to go. But in the hypothetical that we do sell him, which I think we all have to consider is probably the higher percentage chance, if we are going to sell him, then what is the value of him? And I think we've got to bear it in mind that it's a bit of a narrow market. It's a bigger market than Man United might have thought it would be a year ago, because he's done well at Getafe and he's done it in La Liga. I think that was a clever move as well. I don't know whether it was by design, probably not, knowing United's recruitment, but sending Mason Greenwood to Spain, I think was a very good idea. I think if he'd gone to Turkey, you're not going to get a load of Turkish clubs willing to pay £35 million. But in La Liga, you're going to get a lot of clubs who can afford a player that does well in that league, and £35 million will be easily achievable. The question is, can we push it up even more? Because if we do sell him, the more we get for that homegrown player, the more goes into our financial fair play budget. The problem we're going to have is that, one, he's got 1 year left on his contract, which always brings the price down, and two, they're fully aware that there is a bit of a closed market. It's a European market, and we all know the big money's in the Premier League. We all know when Premier League clubs get involved, the price goes north. And I think that we know that there is not going to be a Premier League club that wants to buy Mason Greenwood. They just won't do it. So we are dependent on La Liga clubs and maybe PSG. I don't know. I don't know whether PSG would go near him. There's not enough money in Italy. So there are positives that there will be a lot of interest in Mason Greenwood. I suppose the negative is that there won't be any Premier League market to push the price up, and he's not going to want to go to Saudi Arabia. So Spanish clubs aren't notoriously that well off at the moment, apart from Real Madrid always seem to find a bit of money. So 50 million for Mason, not a dollar less, says Milverton Richards. Well, I agree with Milverton. I think the price for Mason Greenwood should be 50 million quid, but in the market that we're operating in, it might get pushed down, and there's not a lot that we can do about that. The only hope would be that the clubs that want him, if it is Barcelona and it is Atletico Madrid, that they sort of push up against each other. He's done really well in Spain. Like there can be no doubts, whatever side of the story you sit on with Mason Greenwood, he has done well in Spain. He is a talented player, and the profile. It's not like Barcelona and Atletico Madrid and the clubs that are interested in doing it on a whim or a risk. They genuinely see a player there that can improve their teams and make them better. So there is a desire to get the player, and that's really, really important when you're looking to sell them. But the price is going to be interesting because we need as many clubs involved as possible to push that price up if we're going to sell. Joe says, good morning, Mark. Great work as always. I would value him at 65 million. Anders, welcome to Members Club. You're an absolute legend, and appreciate that. Yeah, I think if we can achieve... Look, if it's 35 million at the moment, I think if we can achieve 40, 50, I'd be very happy to take that. But yeah, I mean, Savage says if Mount's 55, then Mason Greenwood 60. But yeah, I sort of get that. But as I said, there's mitigating circumstances here. The money's got to be there for people to do something about it. Now, Mark Langbridge says 35 million to take it off the price for De Jong. Yeah, I suppose you could be right. MS Edu, welcome and thank you very much for your super chat. Yeah, I think that I think that it's an interesting one, and I think the interesting thing for me is there's another story coming out this morning linking Manchester United to Edison at Atalanta, who has a €40 million release clause. So when I look at it like that, you're going to get a 24, 25-year-old Brazilian midfielder from Atalanta for the same price that Mason Greenwood would go to Atletico Madrid. And that instantly makes me think, yeah, we're not getting the price we should get. I mean, in a different world, he's probably worth £80 million. In the world that we live in, reality, I think he's worth 50. And it's whether United can push that price up, because if he is going to go, you want to get as good a price as you can, because there is a very, very big chance that in 3 or 4 years' time, he could be considered to be one of the better attackers in Europe. And you look at it and you go, yeah, we had to let him go on the cheap because of circumstances that were beyond our control. And that will always be irritating. So we've got to try and push that price up as much as we can. In the future, I don't want rivals to say United ruined Mason and Barcelona rescued him somehow. Also, they get a good player for 35 million. Club can create great example of rehab with him, says Sarvish. Well, look, I'm not going down that route this morning, Sarvish. We've been down it many times before. I think that's very, very difficult to take on a rehabilitation project that's going to dismantle United next season, because all the focus will be on the shitstorm that comes with that. That's not to say United won't do it, but you know, we've spoken about it before. The reaction at away grounds, especially the reaction at the home ground, there'll be some people very unhappy about it, and it'll just become the Mason Greenwood show. And the impact it'll have on him, the impact it'll have on the club, going into Ten Hag's big third season. I don't know. Do you want that sort of story? Do you want that sort of show going on around United? Because it will be. Does he want that sort of show? Would you take Gibbs White as a rotational piece with Bruno next season, says HW? I think we've got to figure out what we're doing with Mason Mount before we figure out what we're going to do with Gibbs White. Milverton Richards, welcome to the Members Club. Absolute legend. Good point, though. You know, Man United might be looking at other players. What I do want to talk about is Edison. This Edison guy at Atalanta. Now, he's a player that sort of takes us back to Dan Ashworth and what's happening with him, because Newcastle have been scouting Edison at Atalanta. Very, very interesting profile of midfielder. Some people say he's the heir to Casemiro's throne anyway for Brazil. Some people say he's not actually good enough to come and play in the Premier League. The fact that Newcastle are looking at him, I'd say he's well scouted, and I think he's a very interesting profile of player, and we certainly need that type of player, you know, a holding midfielder that is a holding midfielder by specialism. So interesting player, and I wouldn't be surprised if United did go for Edison in the summer, because we know we don't need Dan Ashworth in the summer to get Edison, because we know Newcastle want Edison, and we know that he's been well scouted. So this is what I mean. Newcastle saying, you're not having Dan Ashworth until after the summer because we don't want you to know our plans, but I know you want Edison and we're going to buy him anyway. So I think Edison's a really interesting player, but what I really wanted to talk about is, and I'm going to do a poll on this one actually. Let's just see what you lot say about this. Would you let Casemiro go in the summer? Just a straight yes or no. Let me know on that one. Please do smash a like on the video, by the way. Let's see if we can get to 1,000 likes. Terp says, what about Onana from Everton? Look, Onana from Everton is a well-scouted player for Manchester United. I'm going to talk about Everton in a little bit. He's a good player. It's going to depend on Everton's situation. I think there is a lot of interest in Onana at Everton. But first of all, Casemiro. Some of the nonsense I've read over the last 24, 48 hours about Casemiro by so-called people. You know what? Journalists go to college or university and they get a degree. Some of them just do not watch football. They learn about football from a bloody book. I mean, some of the nonsense I've read and heard over the last 6 months about Casemiro is quite simply hilarious. Even Swanee says Casemiro's finished. I mean, at what point do you watch football in such a basic way? Like, at what point do you watch Casemiro and go, he's finished? I mean, what part of his game is he finished? Second half against Aston Villa 7 days ago, he was absolutely immense. Absolutely immense. Timing of tackles, passing, movement against one of the best midfields in the country. 7 days ago, he was brilliant in the second half. Gets subbed off against Luton because he's going to get sent off. And suddenly his legs are gone and he's rubbish. I mean, look, I'm all for different opinion. That's what we do here. It creates very good conversation. But you're literally telling me he's finished in 7 days. But he was finished in the summer as well. And he was finished, he was finished in August. So, but he wasn't finished last week, but he's finished now. What you've got with Casemiro, if you watch Manchester United play this season, is a very simple equation, and it's solved like this. When Mainu played away against Newcastle and we got absolutely dominated in the midfield, was Mainu finished? Were his legs gone? No. He was absolutely overwhelmed by Bruno Guimaraes, Joel Linton and Lewis Miley because McTominay and Bruno were nowhere to be seen. And what happens to Casemiro a lot is he gets overwhelmed because the midfield is set up to be leaving him on his own. He's also the destroyer. He's also the guy who has to go and put his foot in. And in this Premier League, he's a marked man. He gets a yellow card. Ten Hag said it after the game the other day. We've been talking about it for ages. Casemiro gets booked for his first tackle 99% of the time. There's no leeway. And we saw it with Luton at the weekend. That guy who left his foot in on Maguire, that's a yellow card. No, it's not. I watch other teams play. I watch Man City play. Rodri does exactly the same tackles that Casemiro does and rarely gets booked on his first tackle. So Casemiro is, for one, a very aggressive player. I agree. But for two, he never gets a... It's always straight yellow, straight yellow, straight yellow. And he always has been. Look at some of his red cards. He is a marked man in this Premier League and he gets way more yellow cards than anybody else. One, because he is aggressive and a tackler. But two, because he's also ridiculously targeted by referees. It's like they may as well give him the yellow card before the whistle goes. It's ridiculous at times. But there is actually also a flip side to that coin, is that he's really the only player in the midfield that goes and wins the ball, because that's his job to do it. And he does get overwhelmed. So he's near the ball a lot, and if you're near the ball a lot, you're going to tackle a lot. His legs haven't gone. That's just tight. That's just what it is. It's the simple issue that we have quite a lot. People want a shiny new toy. So they look at the older player and they go, Casemiro's finished. He's getting booked all the time because he's too slow into the tackle. He's not getting booked all the time because he's too slow into the tackle. He's getting booked because he's aggressive into the tackle. And he's aggressive into the tackle because he's the only guy who goes and does it. What needs to happen with Casemiro is he actually needs somebody in next to him. And hopefully Kobe Mainoo is going to become that guy. But Casemiro ends up on his own a lot in front of the back four as we get broken on, because we do get broken on a lot. He wouldn't pick up as many yellow cards if we'd have slowed the game down against Luton, but we don't. We play this back to front transition, really quick football, and it leads to us getting broken on a lot, and it leads to the midfielder getting broken on a lot. Scott McTominay used to get booked a lot last season when he used to play in that role as well. Fred used to get booked a lot. There's nothing wrong with Casemiro. And actually, if you've watched United over the last few games, the reason we've won the last 4 games is really because we've had a holding midfielder who knows what he's doing in there. I know he had to get subbed off at the weekend, but I do not see an issue with Casemiro, and I do not see a reason to go, let's sell him. Because I think I even saw somebody say the other day, couldn't believe this, read it yesterday. Somebody said, when Mount's back, we need to drop Casemiro and play Mainu, Mount and Bruno. And I was like, that person should be sacked. It was a journalist. They should be sacked right there, right now. We need to drop Casemiro and we need to play Mount, Mainu and Bruno. Yeah. Well, yeah, okay. Casemiro was the reason we got top 4 last year. It wasn't Rashford, it was Casemiro. And Casemiro is one of the reasons we've won our last 4 games. Take him out of the team and see what happens. It'll be the same thing that happened in November and December. I'm telling you now, that player is absolutely crucial. And if he's going to go, then you need to bring somebody else. It's incredible. It's incredible how people don't understand the importance of that player. And if you're going to remove him, you better replace him with somebody else, because it ain't going to be Kobe, Mainu, Mount and Bruno. We will get absolutely run ragged. Casemiro is a really important player for Man United. And if you're going to get rid of him, which is absolutely fine, if you're going to get rid of him, then you better bring somebody in who can do that role, because there's nobody who can do it. And it's not a coincidence that with him in the team, we've won 4 Premier League games in a row. Because even when Mainu was doing that role, and he's done it very, very well, one, I don't think it's Mainu's best position, and 2, we were still losing games. He's absolutely imperative. And people are talking about he's too slow for the Premier League. They don't know what they're talking about. It's got nothing to do with speed. The Premier League is frenetic, it's intense, you need stamina, but there are plenty of midfielders out there that aren't the quickest. And Casemiro, it's not a pace issue, it's an exposure issue. He gets left on his own too much and has to make the tackle. When you're making 80% of the tackles in front of the back 4, then you are going to get 80% of the cards, because he's literally the guy that has to do that job. I thought we'd moved past this. I thought we'd educated ourselves that when Casemiro got injured, as I said, it happened to Mainu a few times, it happened to Amrabat a few times. You play that role, you are absolutely exposed. And also, I think Kobe Mainu's been booked quite a lot in the last few weeks, because when you play in Man United's midfield, you get left on your own a lot and you have to make tackles, because if you don't make a tackle, people will say, why didn't he make a tackle? Do you think it's possible to get Bruno from Newcastle if financial fair play is still a problem, especially if they like McTominay? I'd love Bruno Guimaraes, Sinead, one of my favourite players in the Premier League outside of Manchester United, but I do not think that's going to happen. Our fans need to watch old Real games to get him, says Mark. I genuinely, if you had the time, I would do that. And I suppose I and some of you probably, benefit from that. Casemiro's game is not very different to the way he was playing at Real Madrid in his last 3 years. There's not a drop off in the way that Casemiro. There's nothing different about Casemiro's game apart from what he was doing at Real Madrid. Apart from he was playing in a better team with better players around him. He's always been that type of player. He never got sent off for Real Madrid, and it's a miracle. But he did get a lot of yellow cards, and he's always been aggressive. There's nothing new to his game. People are going, he's slowed down, he's missing tackles. He's always been like that. He's always been an aggressive holding midfielder. Unfortunately, in this league, with the officiating, as we've seen time and time again, they are not corrupt, they're incompetent, and they get it in their head. They get it in for players, and we've seen it before. They just target certain players, and these referees are targeting Casemiro. It's absolutely obvious. I don't care. I can't get into trouble for that, because it's a stone cold opinion. They are targeting Casemiro. He gets booked on his first foul most of the time. But you watch Liverpool or Man City tonight, their midfielder won't get booked on their first tackle. It happens all the time. He didn't even touch the Villa player, and he gets booked. All the time he gets booked. He grabs someone's collar, he gets booked. His ball goes over the top of the ball accidentally, he gets sent off. He grabs someone's collar, he gets sent off. Yeah. Sam says Casemiro's on his 4th yellow and City's coming. It doesn't matter, mate. It's 10 yellows now. We've gone past the 5 yellow thing, so he's fine. Only if we sell him now, we get some cash marks, says Anarud. And why can't they appoint someone else to do director of football in the interim? Would that be even possible, says Jennifer. Well, I think it would be stupid to get somebody to be an interim director of football. I mean, look, it's not going to be up to me. It's not going to be up to you. But why get a director of football and then not use them for a year and then get an interim in for the summer? Look, as I said last night, it makes no sense to get a director of football in and then not have him there for the biggest summer you're about to have. We've got to set. I mean, look, Casemiro's on that list. We've got to make decisions on about 12 players. Are we going to sell? Are we going to sell 8? Are we going to keep them all? It's not just buying players; it's selling players as well. The decisions are huge. It's the biggest summer Manchester United have had in probably 20 years, and you're going to say to the director of football, "Yeah, you can start next year." Like it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's in a very blunt way. It's like employing Rambo to go to, and you go into war in the summer, and you say, "Yeah, we've got Rambo, but you can start after the war." Like, what's the point? What is the point? And that's a very good analogy of it. You know, if you don't know who John Rambo is, maybe look it up. He's a one-man army, and it is. It's like knowing you're going to war in the summer, getting John Rambo in, and then saying, "Have a good holiday, and we'll see you next year." There might be another war then. We need this director of football in now. We're not having an interim. We're not getting Murta to do it. We need. I nearly said we need John Rambo in as director of football now. We need Dan Ashworth in as director of football now. Mark, most of these guys listen to the pundits' opinions, says Gully. Yeah, well, I wish they did their research. I wish they actually watched the way that Man United play and see that any midfielder will pick up yellow cards as the holding midfielder in our team because they're overexposed. And I wish they looked at what Casemiro was like at Real Madrid because there's no difference. Travelbug says Casemiro will take 4 or 5 games for fitness to stick with him. Well, look, whether it takes 4 or 5 games for Casemiro to get his fitness back or not, we've won 4 games with him back in the team. That's not a coincidence. But I do agree with you. I think he will, obviously naturally take a bit of time. Do you think it's possible? I've done that one. Okay, I've done that one. Okay. Ryan says, with Ashworth coming in, hopefully we can get in good replacements. I think the first team is fine with minor upgrades. It's our bench that lets us down. It's a squad of 15, 16 players, you're right. Don't forget there is a clause with Getafe that they also get a share of the deal. I don't think there is, Ginger Red. Why would Getafe get a share of Mason Greenwood's fee? That's nonsense. You don't loan a player out for a year and then say to the loan club, here's one of our best players to have on loan for a year and you can have 25% of the transfer fee. That's a big load of bollocks. Never heard that before. Absolute nonsense. Better be anyway. Would you let Casemiro go in the summer? 63% of you no, 37% of you yes. So at least 63% of you know what you're on about. Although, having said that, if you could find a really good replacement who's got the potential to be the next Casemiro who's about 24, 25. I mean, if this Edison lad is well scouted, then this is the summer that you could move Casemiro on. But what I would say is you go back to what Ben Foster was saying on the show yesterday, having worked with Dan Ashworth at West Brom, and what he said was that Dan Ashworth will come in and he'll remove the dickheads, and he'll want to keep the people who are good for the club with the right attitude, no matter how old they are. Well, he might well come in and look at Casemiro and go, you know what, this type of a player with the experience he's got, the qualities he's got, the influence he's got, you need that player around for the next 2 years as we transition into something. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Yeah. Denver, I'm not reading your rubbish comment. You're gone. And didn't Ashworth sign Tonali? I'm excited, but says Partip. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to assess and analyse every Newcastle deal that they've done. What I will say is I'll never understand the Tonali deal, because how did they not know that there might be a likelihood of future issues coming through? I don't know. Doesn't make any sense, does it really? But it is what it is on that one. Let's talk about the centre-back situation, because a lot of people talking about Branthwaite again. And obviously he's a very important player for Manchester United and for Everton at the moment. And he's doing a very, very good job for Everton at the moment. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, I want to run another poll here because for me, they're starting to become 2 real standout. And we might buy both. We might buy different. But there's 2 centre-backs that are really coming to the fore at the moment. And I think that we we're going to buy a centre-back. Fabrizio has always said that Manchester United want to make a significant centre-back signing in the summer. Champions League football could have an impact on that in relation to revenue streams. Who's going to be sold in the summer could have a big impact on that. The director of football could have a big impact on that, of course. But two centre-backs at the moment, I would say, from what I'm hearing, are the big two, are Todibo and Branthwaite. Todibo is a right-footed centre-back. Branthwaite is a left-footed centre-back. If you buy Branthwaite, he sort of plays where Martinez plays. That doesn't mean you can't have two left-footed centre-backs, but we know that Ten Hag wants balance. He wants a right-footed right-back, a right-footed centre-back, and a left-footed centre-back, and a left-footed left-back. So if Branthwaite comes in, and I do think there is a need for a left-footed centre-back because Martinez has missed most of the season and, you know, we're so reliant on him. But does that make Todibo more important because we need a right-sided centre-back? I think Todibo comes with really good reputation, and I think a lot of United fans are actually starting to look at him now and appreciate what a talent he is and why so many clubs are looking at him. I think it's a very simple deal for Manchester United to do as well because he plays for Nice. Nice didn't sell him in January when other clubs were looking at him, like Spurs and Chelsea. And obviously Sir Jim Ratcliffe owns Nice. So, and Man United's Man United. So if we get in the Champions League, I just don't see how he wouldn't want to come to United. And I think the price would be fairly reasonable as well. Branthwaite looks really good. And if Everton are in financial trouble, which we think they are, and God forbid they get relegated, then they're going to have to let him go. But I think they'll probably let him go anyway. So two interesting profile of centre-backs there for Manchester United to be looking at. Which one would you rather go for? Well, 65% of you are going with Todibo. I think that for me, we need to get the right-sided centre-back in because out of Varane, Maguire and Lindelof, you could argue that two of them need to go. I personally would be very happy to bring in Todibo and Branthwaite and sell Maguire and maybe Varane and go into next season with Martinez, Branthwaite, Todibo, Lindelof and Evans. I'd be quite happy with that five centre-backs, to be honest with you. Johnny Evans hardly ever really needs to play, and you've also got Camboire coming through as well, so I'd be quite happy with that. And I think Camboire is an interesting player. At the moment, it feels like he's a bit of a bit part player, but in Season 2, he might become a player as a right-footed centre-back that could come through as well. So I quite like the idea of both players. I think we do need to buy two centre-backs, but the priority, I would agree, has to be Todibo. And everything I've been hearing, discussing and told since probably last November is that United Todibo will happen. And it's got the feeling of a Rasmus. It's got the feeling of a Lindelof. It's got the feeling of a Bruno. It's just got the feeling of a signing that you hear about and does actually happen because it's actually well sourced. So I think United will get Todibo, and I think that it's interesting actually on Todibo because I know last summer we were looking at Kim Min-jae, Disasi and Todibo, and obviously Todibo is the only one that's available now. Kim Min-jae at Bayern is having a bit of a nightmare, and Disasi at Chelsea I didn't think he looked that good, but in recent weeks I think he looks very, very good. So hopefully that's a good sign in relation to Todibo because he was definitely on the list with those three players. Ginger Red, we've read that one. Thank you very much. I personally think we need to sign both. Let go of Harry and Rafa. Keep Casemiro. We need him. This allows a Ten Hag to build a squad for the long term, says Joshua. Yeah, look, I mean, I really like Varane, and I really like what Maguire's done this season. And I think this is the opportunity that's in front of us this summer, and this is why getting Dan Ashworth in quick is so important, because it's not even about recruitment, it's about moving players on. And I think for so many years we've looked at players and gone, let's sell them, they're rubbish, they're not good enough. But I think there's a few players this summer that you can look at and go, it's not really because I don't think you're very good, it's just that I think now's the time to cash in on you. And I think with Maguire and Varane, I mean, Varane's our best centre-back. I don't care what anybody said. And I saw a stat yesterday that he's won more aerial duels than anybody in the Premier League. Anybody. Any other centre-back, Varane has won more aerial duels than any other centre-back, which is amazing. I think Varane's is our best centre-back. And I think that Harry Maguire's done really well this season, but I think with both players being 31, you've got an opportunity there to cash in and bring some money in that you'll never get next summer. And also with Varane, you've got the injuries, haven't you? Yeah, very interesting. There's just something just come out here actually about the 5th place for England. UEFA data shows, as it stands, 5th place in the Premier League won't be a Champions League place. Italy and Germany in line to get extra spots instead based on the country's European performance for the expanded 36-team Champions League next season. Italy and Germany, and then England are in 3rd. I'm really not bothered about this. I think somebody just sent me this. If I like it on Twitter, you'll know the tweet I'm talking about. So if you go to @MarkGoldbridge, you'll be able to like it. I'm not retweeting it because it's a bloody Arsenal one. Yeah, so at the moment, based on the coefficients list, this is very relevant for Manchester United. So 5th place will be a Champions League spot if England finish in the top 2 in the coefficients league, which is basically the top 2 performing countries in Europe this year. So at the moment, Italy and Germany are 1st and 2nd, and England are in 3rd. But England are in 3rd by a minuscule amount, and we've got the knockout stages to come. So I am not bothered about that, because do you think Germany and Italian teams are going to outperform English clubs when it matters? You get more points in the coefficients table for getting into the semi-finals anyway. So I don't think that's going to stay the same. I don't think German clubs are going to outperform English clubs in the knockout stages, and I don't think Italian clubs are as well. So yeah, I'm absolutely not concerned about that at all. Partip says, have you changed your stance on anyway? And also, as somebody just said in the chat, we're going to get 4th anyway. Look, we're not playing for 5th. We're playing for 4th. If we get 4th, we're in the Champions League anyway. I actually think if we get 5th, we'll be in it as well. Partip says, have you changed your stance on Varane lately? Says, look, I was just talking about it there. With Varane and Maguire, they're both 31 this year, and we're going to have a rebuild for 3 years. They're not going to be players when we're 34 that could be part of winning titles. I personally think there's a case to let both go, because you'll get a fee for Varane if he goes to Saudi and his wage is big, and you'll get a fee for Maguire if he stays in the Premier League and his wage is big. So I think both players you might get 40, 50 million for, and you remove their wages. If they were with Varane, if he was injury free, I'd keep him because he's our best centre back, but he's not. And with Maguire, I think that he's not the profile of centre back that we want to play football with. Harry Maguire is a good player to be a 3rd choice centre back when you need to dig in, but for 190k a week, you don't pay that for a 3rd choice centre back. So, and also, does Maguire really want to be sat on the bench for most of next season? So I think it's mutually beneficial for Maguire to go. And with Varane, he can't play 2 games a week. And if we're in the Champions League, we want to play 2 games a week. So we're not getting rid of players because I don't like them. I'm getting rid of players because I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about building for the future. And I think there are some players like that. And Casemiro would fall into that list as well if you wanted to do that. I wouldn't get rid of Casemiro personally. I think he's got another few more years in him. And then there's the crap players that we need to get rid of as well. I personally think we need to sign both. We've done that one from Joshua. Do you have a list of players you think will be gone in the summer and how much we can raise from the sales, says Shane. Kobe made a good tackle versus Luton and was booked as Milverton Richards. Exactly. You know, some of these bookings that are happening for United are a joke. That was never a yellow card for Mainu. Any news on Shaw, says Stewart? There's just no point. There's no point. I mean, I could find out, but there's just no point on Luke Shaw because the positive was that he was back for Luton and then he came off at half time. So I think with Luke Shaw, it's not even one of those injuries now that you really want to know about because I just could he be back? Could he not be back? I don't know. What do you think of a midfield of Mainu, Edison and De Jong or Kimmich and sell Bruno and Casemiro? Well, we're not going to sell Bruno, but I mean, look, Mainu, Edison and Kimmich would be an interesting midfield. I think Edison's quite defensive and so is Kimmich, so I don't know whether I'd like the balance of that. Mark, you're on first name terms with Rambo. Respect, says Nick P. John Rambo, yeah. Did Mark, you're on... Oh, sorry. Didn't Ashworth sign Tonali? Yeah, okay, that's a good one. I just want to go back to that point from Shane Matthews. Do you have a list of players that you would sell for Manchester United, and what do you think we'd get for them? Look, I think United have got £100 million to spend this summer. And I think that the massive amount of money that we can spend this summer will come from removal of players. I think that Wan-Bissaka at right back goes for about 30 million quid. I think that you could sell Varane and Maguire for about another 40, maybe even 50, so that's 70. I think that McTominay could go for 30, so that's 100 million quid raised there. Sancho, probably get rid of for about 40 million, that's 140. Greenwood, probably another 40, that's 180. Yeah, I think Man United can raise about 150, 200 million pounds in fees, which if you add that to the 100 we've got, you know, you're approaching 250 budget to spend. So there's plenty of money we can raise. And some people in the chat will be saying if we sell Rashford, that's pure profit as well. So the thing about, look, I don't want to sell Rashford. You know, I might be in the minority, but I don't want to sell Rashford. But the thing about it is, if you sell Rashford, you don't actually need to replace him per se. Not in relation to if you sold him for 80, you don't need to spend 80. You could spend 50 on Neto or 50 on Olise, and you've still got 30 in your pocket. So, but some would say if you sold Bruno, which again I wouldn't do, that could be pure profit as well, because do you need to replace Bruno? If you sell Bruno for whatever, do you need to replace him when you've got Mount? But Mount's got to prove himself. That's the big thing, really, isn't it? But yeah, interesting points, of course, absolutely. Can I just remind you, the podcast has literally dropped this morning, the Goldbridge Saves Football podcast. Please do support it. Go and give it a listen. Obviously, when you're watching the United Stand, you've got to have a phone or a laptop or a computer to watch it. But the great thing about the podcast is you can just put your earphones in, pop down the shops, cut your grass like Dan Ashworth, trim your grass with Manscaped, or just go for a walk or whatever, or be in the bath or whatever you want to do. You can just listen to it and get about your business in the car, whatever. Links in the video description, but you can also scan this QR code if it works. I don't have my phone, but I believe it does. Hold your camera up to that QR code, download it and give it a listen. The reason I'm mentioning it this morning is the first 10 minutes is talking about Manchester United and Newcastle in a different way to that we've spoken about here. It's really talking about the next 5 years and the impact that Dan Ashworth leaving Newcastle will have, and it is a bad impact, and the positivity it could have for United. Very interesting listen. Go and give it a listen. The Goldbridge Saves Football podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in this morning. We're back at 2 o'clock, and tonight I'm back at 7 o'clock because I'm doing a double watch along for the Champions League and the Man City Brentford game. So I will see you later for that. We're also back at 2 o'clock as well. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And do not forget to check out the podcast by scanning that QR code. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Take care.